I'm VJ Hamilton and welcome to the Autoimmune Reset, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome to this Friday 5 episode of the Autoimmune Reset podcast. I'm your host VJ Hamilton. I'm a nutritionist, scientist and expert in autoimmune disease. And today I want to talk to you about standard blood markers in the context of autoimmune disease and hair loss, because one of the biggest issues I see is not always a lack of testing, but a lack of interpretation of those test results. Many people will come to me and they're told that everything looks fine, yet they're feeling exhausted, their hair is still shedding, they've got reactive skin, their digestion is unpredictable, and they're dealing with symptoms like fatigue, inflammation, brain fog, hormonal shifts at different times of the month, anxiety, and these ongoing autoimmune symptoms that clearly suggest that something deeper is happening beneath the surface. And often when I actually sit down and review their blood work properly, because a lot of the time when I'm talking to potential clients or clients, they will send me the results that they've had done with their doctors. And when I look through this, it gives me a lot more clues than I originally thought. And the problem is that many markers are being viewed in isolation or simply checked against a very broad laboratory reference range. The reference range is based on the average person in society rather than a healthy person as well. So we've got to always consider the context of an individual person and their symptoms and the wider physiological picture as well, because the body works as an interconnected system and subtle shifts across multiple markers can sometimes tell us far more than one dramatically abnormal result on its own. So today I want to walk you through some of the standard lab markers I commonly look at in clinic when somebody is struggling with autoimmune disease, inflammation, fatigue or hair loss, including alopecia. And the first area is iron. Now most people immediately think of ferritin, especially with hair loss. And ferritin is definitely important because it reflects how much iron you are storing, and it is one of the first things I look at in the context of hair shedding. Ferritin alone does not always tell the full story because ferritin is also an inflammatory marker. So in autoimmune disease especially, ferritin can sometimes appear normal or even elevated despite someone still experiencing symptoms consistent with poor iron availability at the tissue level. This is why I also like looking at transferrin saturation, serum iron, and the wider iron picture, because somebody may technically have iron present but not necessarily be transporting or using it efficiently. And this matters because iron plays such a huge role in oxygen delivery, mitochondrial function, how we're producing energy, and hair follicle health. And hair is not essential for survival. So when the body senses stress, inflammation, nutrient depletion, or low energy availability, it will often divert resources away from hair growth in order to prioritize survival. But we also have to ask why iron markers may be suboptimal in the first place. And it's not just about the amount of iron we're consuming and absorbing and utilizing, but how much iron are we losing? Because if somebody is having very heavy periods, then they might be losing a lot of iron. If they are not absorbing iron due to poor stomach acid, then that could be a factor as well. It could be due to gut inflammation, celiac disease, autoimmune gastritis. It might be due to restricted eating. I've worked with a lot of clients and they've sent me their meal plans and they're just not consuming enough iron in their diets. And it can also be due to chronic inflammation affecting iron recycling, because simply taking iron without understanding the wider picture is not always the answer. The second area I look at is thyroid markers. This is a really important one in autoimmune disease. I commonly see people told that their thyroid is fine because their TSH falls within range, but TSH alone, thyroid stimulating hormone alone, rarely tells the whole story. I always want to look at the thyroid hormones themselves, like the free T4 and the free T3, the thyroid antibodies. Is there an autoimmune issue going on? Symptoms and the wider metabolic picture, because thyroid hormones influence metabolism, your temperature regulation, skin, digestion, energy production, mood, menstrual health, and hair growth. And something many people don't realise is that conversion matters too. Your body has to actually convert that T4, the thyroid hormone that is produced by a thyroid gland, into the active thyroid hormone T3. And this process can potentially be impacted by inflammation, chronic stress, nutrient deficiencies, blood sugar instability, poor gut health, low selenium, zinc deficiency, and even shifts in estrogen, which is why sometimes people experience more thyroid symptoms when they have lower estrogen. It almost unmasks those symptoms that estrogen was helping with at the time. So somebody may technically be producing those thyroid hormones, but not necessarily utilizing it efficiently at the cellular level. And in conditions like Hashimoto's, thyroid antibodies are often elevated years before thyroid markers become significantly abnormal. Again, this is why interpretation and context matters so much. The next marker I look at closely is vitamin D, and vitamin D is less of a vitamin and actually more of an immune modulating hormone. It plays a huge role in immune tolerance, immune regulation, your mood, your bone health, especially when you've gone through menopause, and it is vital for hair follicle cycling. And low vitamin D is something I see incredibly commonly in autoimmune disease. Now, of course, vitamin D is not the sole answer to autoimmunity or alopecia, but when levels are depleted, it can absolutely add to the overall burden on the immune system and influence inflammatory signaling. And there have been so many studies done around vitamin C and autoimmune disease. I started looking into this originally when my brother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and there is a huge link between vitamin D and multiple sclerosis. It's not 100% understood, but the studies do show that people with low vitamin D, especially in childhood, are more likely to develop multiple sclerosis. And vitamin D deficiency may coexist alongside poor gut health. It could be due to low magnesium, because you need magnesium to help you to be able to utilize vitamin D. It could be due to chronic inflammation, reduced sunlight exposure, stress, poor sleep, and undereating, because health is rarely about one singular issue. Another nutrient I pay close attention to is zinc, because zinc is incredibly important for immune regulation. It's important for your skin health, thyroid function, wound healing, and healthy hair growth. One of the signs of a zinc deficiency is white marks on your nails. It can also influence your taste. So if you have a zinc deficiency, you might not be able to taste food as well as you normally would do. You might find that if you have a cut or a bruise, it doesn't heal very quickly. That can also be a sign of a zinc deficiency. And low zinc can sometimes contribute to many issues, including a low immune function, so you might end up getting ill more often. It can be linked to skin issues, low stomach acid, which can affect your gut health, and even hair shedding. And again, it's about looking at patterns, not just one marker. And the next area is immune and inflammatory markers, and this isn't just one marker. I'm looking at the white blood cells, neutrophils, lymphocytes, C-reactive protein, and ESR, the erythrocyte sedimentation rate. And this is where patterns can become really interesting, because sometimes somebody's total white blood cells may technically sit within range, but when you look more closely, you notice low normal neutrophils, altered lymphocyte ratios, or subtle immune shifts that may suggest the immune system is under strain. And within the autoimmune community, and within the functional medicine community as well, we talk about the immune system having a language, and it's about interpreting the language of the immune system. To be honest, when I studied immunology at university over 20 years ago now, there were cells that hadn't been discovered at that point. We are finding more and more immune cells, and we still don't know the full extent of the immune system. Chronically low white blood cells or neutrophils can sometimes be seen in autoimmune disease, chronic viral burden, which can be a factor in autoimmune conditions, nutrient deficiencies, immune exhaustion to a certain extent, or prolonged stress. Whereas elevated neutrophils may reflect acute inflammation. It could be due to your stress responses, infections, or inflammatory activation. And again, I'm rarely looking at one marker in isolation. I'm looking at the story that the body might be trying to tell us. Another marker I think is overlooked is triglycerides. Most people associate triglycerides purely with cardiovascular health, but they can also tell us a lot metabolically as well. Elevated triglycerides may reflect blood sugar instability, insulin resistance, which can affect your blood sugar regulation, inflammation, liver stress, or metabolic dysfunction. So if I see raised triglycerides, I'm looking at some of my clients' other symptoms and seeing if this links with that. Whereas at the moment, I have seen quite a few clients who are losing their periods, they are having issues with their menstrual cycle, and they have very low triglycerides, which is helpful because there is something called hypothalamic amenorrhea, and this is where you lose your periods, often due to the body being in a stress state for whatever reason. Again, by looking at the triglycerides, if they are very low, for the most part, that would always have been seen as a good thing. But the truth is, what it can tell us is that someone is under eating, they might be struggling with fat digestion or absorption, they might be overtraining, or following a restrictive diet which really isn't working for them. And this matters because blood sugar regulation and metabolic stability play a huge role in immune function, inflammation, your hormone balance, and your hair health. And finally, I think it's important to say that standard markers do not always give us the full picture on their own. Serum B12 is a great example because somebody may technically fall within the range for B12 but still have a functional insufficiency at the cellular level, and this was the case for me as well. And this is why markers like methylmalonic acid or MMA can sometimes provide additional insight. TSH is another example. Normal TSH does not necessarily rule out thyroid dysfunction, poor thyroid hormone conversion, or autoimmune thyroid activity. And I have tested clients who have hair loss or alopecia. I've done a full thyroid panel and all of their thyroid markers have been in range other than the active free T3, which is the one that has the effect on the body and can affect the hair follicle and hair growth cycle. So even though all their other thyroid markers are in range, because the T3 is out of range, that is affecting them. And that's when we need to think about, well, why is the T3 low? Why is conversion from T4 to T3 not happening appropriately? And there are various things that you can do from a lifestyle and a nutrition perspective to help with that. And ferritin itself can become misleading during inflammatory states if we do not look at the wider iron picture alongside it. Because as I said, ferritin can be raised when you are inflamed, and even markers like HbA1c, which is tested for prediabetes and diabetes, may sometimes miss blood sugar instability if somebody is still experiencing significant glucose swings throughout the day, and that can impact their cellular health and cause insulin resistance. So ultimately, this is why interpretation matters so much. Blood work should never simply become a tick box exercise or normal versus abnormal. The real value often comes from looking at patterns, physiology, symptoms, history, and the person as a whole, because symptoms often start subtly long before somebody develops a diagnosis or their blood work becomes obviously abnormal. There's hair shedding, you might have fatigue, poor recovery, digestive symptoms, skin changes, sleep disruption, blood sugar crashes, especially in the afternoon or after eating carbohydrates, or just changes in their mood or just feeling like something isn't right in their body. And these things matter. And if we learn to listen to those early signs, we can often support the body before things progress further. So if you've been told that everything is normal, but deep down you still feel that something is off, please trust that intuition. We need to listen to our bodies more. So have a look through your results, write down your symptoms, keep a track of your symptoms, and hopefully that will give you a bit more insight. I hope this episode gave you a better understanding of some of the markers I commonly look at in clinic and why interpretation matters so much in autoimmune disease and alopecia. And as always, if this episode resonated with you, I would love it if you shared it with somebody who may need to hear it right now. And if you'd like support with your own health journey, you can apply to work with me using the link in the show notes. You can also join my free group, the Autoimmune Forum notes. And if you have any questions or would like to share anything with me, then feel free to pop over to my Instagram account, which is at the Autoimmunity Nutritionist. I'd love to hear from you over there. If not, have a fantastic rest of your weekend and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks so much for listening and I'll see you next week. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time. And remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.